Hey everybody, I thought I would make a video here today. It's kind of a rare rainy day in Vegas, so I got some time to do a little talking. And if you are new to my channel, I like to document as many ancient sites from around the world as I can. And we are going to do that today. We are flying into southeastern Turkey and the ancient site of Harran. And this is an area of the world that I have talked about previously in videos. Let me just back up here and give you a little look at exactly where this is. But the famous site of Göbekli Tepe, the 12,000-year-old site of Göbekli Tepe, is about 40 kilometers or 20 plus miles to the north. And I believe about 20 miles to the north, 38 kilometers, is the ancient site of Edessa. And this is a place, an area of the world that's connected to a lot of biblical stories. The mountains of Ararat are here, so the Noah story, possibly the Eden story, come from here. Maybe the Jesus story, I talked about that, coming from ancient Edessa. And one thing I did not talk about in those videos was Abraham. He comes from ancient Ur, and if somebody was to ask me where ancient Ur was, I would no doubt say it was ancient Urfa, present-day Sanlurfa, also known as ancient Edessa in ancient times. The history of Abraham and ancient Urfa is ripe. There are many monuments, stories. There's even a cave where Abraham was supposedly buried in ancient Urfa. So if you believe ancient Urfa was somewhere in Iraq, that is perfectly fine. And if you want to leave a comment below, but I think one of the biggest areas that it should be questioned is when historians try to attach present-day cities to biblical stories. I think that is a highly flawed area of research, and I just thought I would mention that. But Abraham, it says he migrated from ancient Ur to Harran and lived here in ancient times, and it makes much more sense that it was ancient Urfa, but I really don't want to go into that too much. But this is what the ruins of Harran look like today. And the period of history that this was occupied goes back maybe 5,000 years. So many different people built here. And let me just show you one picture here. This is what the basic ruins of Harran look like today. And I believe this tower was built in the 8th century. And this is in honor of an ancient tower that stood here in very ancient times. And I am going to talk a little bit about that on a website, and I'm also going to read from Graham Hancock's Magicians of the Gods book, where he talks about Harran briefly, but let me just jump over to that website. This is unchartedruinsblogspot.com, and I will leave a couple links below. I found this to be an excellent website. But this is entitled Harran of the Sabians, and I think I will just read. It says, the ruins of Harran, which occupies the site of ancient Kure, are located some 40 kilometers south of the modern city of Sanlurfa in southeastern Turkey. Amidst the vast crater of ruins visible from many miles away stands a high tower built of solid stone. This is all that remains of what was one of the major occult universities and mystery schools of the ancient world. It says it was already a flourishing center by the 2nd millennium BC, famous throughout Mesopotamia and the eastern world for its fabulous temple to the moon god Sin. King Nabonidus of Babylon, who was probably himself a native of Harran, turned the city into one of the major centers of his Neo-Babylonian Empire by the 7th century BC, considerably enriching the great temple of Sin. In classical times, Harran could benefit from a relative stability due to its cushion status between the Roman Empire and Parthia. Harran proved, however, unfortunate to many Roman rulers, and it goes on to talk about Crassus and Caracalla and Julian, who all died in campaigns right around Harran, or even right outside the gates of Harran. It says, even in the late 4th and 5th century, Harran was largely immune from the diffusion of Christianity throughout the Eastern Roman Empire and became one of the major strongholds of classical paganism. After the Edict of Theodosius in 389 AD and Justinius in 529 AD, and the destruction of pagan temples which followed, Harran was taken as a safe refuge by various Gnostic and Hermetic sects, which had become persecuted in the rest of the empire. It says, according to century historian Libanius, in the very middle of the city of Carrhae stood a magnificent temple, considered by many the equivalent to the Serapeum of Alexandria. In this temple was a very high tower, which was also used as an observation post because one could see the entire plain of Carrhae from its top. However, when the prefect of Sinaitis ordered the closure and destruction of all pagan temple in Syria and Egypt, this temple of Carrhae was also partially destroyed and all of the idols and statues carried away. Notwithstanding the destruction and the sack suffered by the hands of the prefect Sinaitis by the 5th century, the temple had been already reconstructed and paganism reestablished to the point that pilgrim Egeria, also in the 5th century, could not find a single Christian in the whole city of Harran. And I went over that briefly, how the kind of the history of early Christianity coming from this area around present-day San Lurfa, how it's kind of become erased by history. Well, I find that pretty fascinating. By the 5th century, just in this area, which is just 20 miles south of where the first Christians were first called Christians, in Antioch, which was ancient Edessa, just 20 miles to the south in the 5th century, not a single Christian could be found. So I just find that very fascinating history. Once again, I will leave the link in the description if you want to read this whole article, but I just want to go over a couple more points just to wrap up this website. It says the city was clearly established according to a Hermetic ground plan. It had 7 gates dedicated to each of the planetary deities, the Sun, Moon, considered equal to the planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, according to the principles of talismanic magic. It was circular in shape and had a large temple in its center surmounted by a high tower. And just going on here, it says the name Sabians is likely a derivation from the Coptic Sabia, meaning people of the stars, likely a reminiscence of a very ancient star cult which had its roots in the ancient Egyptian religion, the cult of the Magi of ancient Persia, and the Western Hermetic tradition. The linkage between the Sabians of Harran and Egypt was made even stronger by their annual pilgrimage to the pyramids of Giza, quoted by several Arabic writers. And just to wrap it up, it says a famous phrase written over the main entrance door to the largest temple of Harran could still be read by Arabic historian Masudi in 943 AD. Know yourself, and you will become God. And that is what it said over the main entrance door to the Temple of Harran. And I am now going to just read from Graham Hancock's Magicians of the Gods book, in just a few paragraphs from that, where he talks about the Sabians of Harran. And I'll just show you this picture, and this shows you a good look at what is all that is left on this mound in this middle of this plain. And you can see this would be a great observational point for many miles around. Now I'll just start reading from Graham Hancock's book. This comes from chapter 16, entitled Written in the Stars. It says, another group known as the Sabians and renowned as star worshippers came from even further away as pilgrims to the pyramids of Giza. Their home city was Harran, located near Göbekli Tepe in what is now southeastern Turkey. There is no record of when these pilgrimages began, but Harran had already been settled for thousands of years when the earliest surviving written reference to it appears in an inscription dated to around 2000 BC. What is remarkable is that the Sabian pilgrimages to Giza were still taking place as late as 1228 AD. It says the Sabians fully recognized the pyramids of Khufu and Khafre as being monuments connected with the stellar cult. This may seem like a small point, and experts on the Sabians have ignored it, but it proves the continuation of a hidden tradition. Ancient Egyptian religion and ancient Egyptian culture ceased to exist hundreds of years before 1228 AD, the last known inscription being 394 AD. It says, while Egyptologists did not rediscover the evidence of the stellar nature of the pyramid cult until the early 1900s, there is therefore no way other than a hidden tradition that the Sabian star worshippers could have known the pyramids were connected to the stars or could have been motivated to make them objects of a pilgrimage. And once again, this is from Graham Hancock's Magicians of the Gods book. So that is a brief look into the history of ancient Harran, located in southeastern Turkey. This is what the ruins look like today. Most of these buildings were built maybe 1,000 to 1,500 years ago, but they were built over much ancient ruins, and the history of this site goes back thousands of years. And I don't think we can really pinpoint when the first ruins were put in here, because it seems the Turkish government has really limited archaeological research in this area, which is too bad. But obviously a perfect point for astronomical observations as well as just surveying the area for protection. And I believe there could have been a very ancient knowledge that filtered down from the people who built it, Göbekli Tepe. If the ruins here go back thousands of years, and this is right next to, within, a couple days journey from Göbekli Tepe, this would have been the perfect spot to do astronomical observations from, and they seem to be connected and have great interest at the pyramids of Giza and the stellar cult that built those, whoever they were. But I just think this is fascinating, and this ancient tower that stood here in ancient times was obviously very famous, and it could be seen for miles around. And since this is where some of the original stories of the Bible comes from, if somebody to ask me where the Tower of Babel was, I would say right here, and I'm pretty sure of that. I have done studies of the Tower of Babel and the etymology of the names associated with the Tower of Babel. And let me just go over to this website here that I used. It says, according to tradition, Harran was first founded by Nimrod, the legendary hero who is credited by biblical scholars for building the Tower of Babel. So we have the person who is directly credited with the Tower of Babel in ancient tradition being the founder of Harran. There was a famous tower here. It was huge. It could be seen for miles around. What that looked like, nobody knows. But I believe that filtered down into the biblical narrative as the Tower of Babel. So just thought I would throw that in there at the end. Hope you thought this was interesting. This area of the world has many famous stories coming from many different periods of history. This is ancient Harran, located in southeastern Turkey. I hope you all thought this was interesting, and you have a nice day.